Sometimes people vanish from WWE TV. It's been happening for years, and if you're a seasoned fan, you just accept it. No one is safe from it either, even if you're a huge star. Back in the day, the Ultimate Warrior was there one day and gone the next. Behind the scenes, it all tied into a falling out with Vince McMahon, but still, if you didn't know that, you just thought he'd fallen into the abyss. It's continued ever since, and it's even worse when you're lower down the card. You can be involved in an angle, somebody backstage changes their mind, and that's it. Not only are you no longer in front of camera, but you never got to finish your story. You become a statistic in lists like this. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 10 WWE wrestlers who suddenly vanished. Number 10, Vanson. Vanson was on the cusp of something special. The British wrestler had been plying his trade for years when all of a sudden WWE put the biggest opportunity possible on his plate. He was gonna take on The Undertaker. Made clear as a vignette of his interrupted a December 12, 2008 edition of SmackDown, it took aid at the dead man and made no bones about it. And sure, we didn't know much about this guy, but that's how you get a wrestler on their way. Go big! Clearly somebody in charge didn't agree. That person wasn't Freddie Prinze Jr., who was apparently behind the concept to begin with, but as soon as we'd seen all this, it just fell by the wayside. We never saw Vanson again, and he was released in 2009. It was the end of a rough ride following Hayes' developmental deal signing in 2007. He'd spent a long time nursing a knee injury, got this opening, and then had it taken away from him before he was gone. For no reason. Genuinely a mystery, like evolution. Number 9, Lars Sullivan. One that's far more difficult when you know the story away from the ring. It's still the case that WWE pushed Lars Sullivan's arrival on the main roster hard. It just never came. The promo video stopped and yet there was no sign of the man. This was even more intriguing if you were an NXT fan because you were aware of Sullivan's tear through that brand. He seemed ready-made for Raw or SmackDown, and rumors that he was meant to take on and beat John Cena at WrestleMania were there. And it all changed on a whim. The truth is, Lars was ready to debut on the 14th of January 2019 before suffering an apparent anxiety attack. Everybody involved felt it was best he got help, and he did. The plan was scrapped for the good of his mental health. There's nothing wrong with that either, and it's a credit that this was handled so well. It's no laughing matter and it should receive due care. Hopefully when he's back on his feet we can get back to business, but Sullivan did have a huge arrival planned and there was no payoff. It was a bit like Emelina, although thankfully we didn't get a bizarre reveal live, only to be told that the entire gimmick was already over. Number 8, Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock built up so much goodwill with the WWE Universe during the Attitude Era that many fans still ask for his return today. I don't think we're gonna get it, but his name does occasionally fall from the tongue. The fact he was nixed so viciously from TV also showed how ruthless things were back in 1999. It wasn't like Shamrock was a bit player, he'd been heavily involved with the corporation and had also been decapitated by The Rock with a steel chair. I've still no idea how he survived that. Maybe what actually happened is on impact Ken's souls left his body and that's why he got released. If not, it just came out of nowhere. During a feud with Chris Jericho, he got into it with Mr. Hughes, Y2J's bodyguard at the time, and that was that. He never returned, and as far as kayfabe, you're meant to think his injuries were that bad he just walked away. No explanation, no nothing. Imagine he does make a comeback one day. Good luck making sense of that. Number 7, Planet Stasiak. Twice Shawn Stasiak left WWE without any mention as to why, but it was the second that was the most bizarre. At least first time around he jumped ship to WCW, and who could blame him? He was meat at the time. Meat! All those wrestling dreams and then you make it to the big time and you become meat. Great. Although it is said he wasn't innocent in all this either. Shawn had allegedly been recording backstage conversations in secret for a book he wanted to write. And is not smart. Once World Championship Wrestling had folded, he was brought back as part of the Alliance, but it was just bonkers. Booked to be a crazed loon that would say ridiculous things and then lose, or randomly run into a wall, it felt like one big punishment. No one was a bigger joke than Stasiak, hence why he was given the first name of Planet. If that doesn't sum it up, I don't know what does. It only lasted for a few months, and after he asked for a release and had it granted, no one on the writing team felt like they needed to tell the crowd where he'd gone. Back to his home million miles away, I guess. Good for him. Number 6, Bam Bigelow. Much like Stasiak, on 2 separate occasions, Bam Bigelow fell foul to Vince McMahon's employment acts, and both times it followed lukewarm babyface runs. That to me sounds like someone being put in a position that was always going to be a struggle and then being punished for it. But what do I know? I am an asshole. He was all set when he first arrived in 1987, as not only was he handpicked by Hulk Hogan, but also joined the Hulkster in his Survivor Series team. That's quite the rub when you get your foot in the door, but it didn't connect like officials wanted. Hence why at WrestleMania 4 he was put up against the one-man gang in the World Title Tournament and lost in less than 3 minutes. Following that he was gone. Cheers, Bam Bam. Things went far better when he returned in 1990, especially as he was chosen to fight Lawrence Taylor at WrestleMania 11. He was the ultimate bad guy and it suited him to a T. The issue was he was meant to turn following this mega match, but when Shawn Michaels took that role instead, Bigelow was left out to dry. He lost to Goldust at the Survivor Series, and even though he was advertised for the Royal Rumble, he never made it there. He was taken off TV and we were never told what the deal was, because we didn't deserve it. Number 5, Tori. Tori did a lot with very little given where she was in WWE. Allowed a bit more leniency than others, she was able to raise her stake in the company by standing alongside the likes of Kane and X-Pac, and had a decent enough arrival when she feuded with Sable at WrestleMania 15. She also got put through a table by the Dudley Boys, which resulted in disappearing from TV for 6 months. When she returned in 2001, Tori was a balaclava-wearing ninja who helped out Raven until she was unmasked during an episode of Sunday Night Heat. This was mostly as she was going to be a coach on Tough Enough, but still, it was an odd return no matter how you flipped it. She still had a lot to do though, given she was both on the main and reality version of the show, and then by September, that was that. She was out the door with nothing said after being lost in the Invasion Shuffle. Admittedly, during that time there were just too many bodies in the WWE, but come on, was a bit rich just write her out of the program and never even tried to tell us why. Hopefully you're seeing a theme here. Number 4, Mr. Perfect. Poor Kurt Hennig. As perfect as he tried to be, he was never allowed to exit from the WWE with any kind of hoopla at all. Always backing himself and protecting his own worth, which is pretty badass really. Perfect turned face at the Survivor Series 1992 before being yelled off TV thanks to Razor Ramon a year later. He was meant to be on the bad guys team, but instead left the company. He would re-emerge at WrestleMania 10 to turn heel on Lex Luger, which started absolutely nothing. While that sounds like the perfect way to start a feud, it just never happened. Perfect would cut a promo on the post-Mania Raw, but before they got into anything, he was gone. He stayed hidden until 1995, and a late 1996 in-ring return was cut short when he decided he wanted to go to WCW. When that died, a surprise comeback in 2002 went the exact same way. One day he was there, the next day he wasn't. Perfect had many highlights throughout his WWE tenure, but this never jumped across to how he would leave the place. Apparently it was just easier to tell him to stop coming to events and hope that nobody else realized. Number 3, Miss Elizabeth. When Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth got back together in 1991, it was the WWE's finest hour when it came to a love story. Not only did it mirror reality, but it allowed the Macho Man to keep his retirement stipulation following his Mania loss to the Warrior, and it hit the audience right in the heart. Emotion is important, people, and this did the job. Then Liz was never allowed to be seen again. It wasn't as instantaneous as that, and while we would continue to push their relationship as Savage returned to the ring to take on Jake Roberts, and that awesome title program with Ric Flair in 1992, the clock had already started ticking. This was doubly strange as everything with the Nature Boy was built around Liz and her apparent eyes for Flair. That obviously turned out to be lies, leaving Randy and Elizabeth to stand tall on screen once more. The truth behind the scenes was that the couple weren't happy at all and wanted to split, and that happened in front of an audience during a UK Rampage event. For anybody that wanted proper closure though, you weren't going to get it. Liz was written out of all plans and fans had no idea what had happened until she very surprisingly turned up in WCW in 1996. Not the best arc for a character everybody loved from the early 90s, and if you were trying to write the narrative here as a story, you would literally just have to stop talking about her halfway through for no reason. Number 2, Mojo Rawley. This is another bizarre entry because even WWE doesn't seem to know what they're doing with Mojo Rawley. At least when they shoot someone out of an impromptu cannon, they stick to it. The Andre the Giant Battle Royal winner comes and goes like nobody's business. It all started in January 2019 where we saw Mojo yelling at himself in the mirror. Apparently not pleased with his own being at all and his so-called failures, he thought the best way to deal with it was random shouting at his own reflection. Cool. He also promised to reveal who he really was, and if you had bought into a potential conclusion down the line, Well, I don't know what to tell you. One week he was doing this, the next he wasn't. Then Rawley randomly popped back up recently but could easily vanish once more. There's no rhyme or reason, so all bets are off. The real worry is if WWE decides to bin this off completely, what else can Mojo possibly do? He's done his best with a bad situation, but there's only so many times you can do that until you use up all your goodwill. I just hope he's alright. He seems perturbed. Number 1. Lex Luger. Lex Luger shockingly turning up on the debut edition of WCW Nitro remains one of the most famous switches in history. That is, if you watched both shows. If you didn't, all you saw was one of WWE's most pushed projects in years enter SummerSlam 1995 and then leave forever. Although, to be fair, it wasn't like Lex was shining at the time. Miles away from the Lex Express that had toured the United States, an Allied Power tag team had ended after Davey Boy Smith had attacked Luger, whereas a run with Diesel had just underlined him as a definite mid-carder. WWE had given up on him. Amazingly too, this exit only came after friend Sting had pushed Eric Bischoff to hire Luger back across. Expecting to be turned down, Lex surprised everyone by agreeing, and no one, including Vince McMahon, could believe it when he just walked out onto WCW's Monday Night event. WWE even had a bunch of matches and interviews in the can that they had intended to use down the line. Instead, they were thrown in the bin. The silent treatment began, and the new wrestling war was most definitely on. Know of any other WWE wrestlers who suddenly vanished? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head on over to whatculture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from What Culture, and I will never vanish on you.